Alright, you guys. It's elevated here. I'm still around. Yeah, it's been a while since I've worked on this series. This is supposed to be the last video. I will say that I did go back and watch this entire series, like everything I'd put out. I think I did that like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm kind of caught up on where we're at. I do apologize for the wait. It's just life happens. It is what it is. But yeah, so we're jumping right into it. Just want to get this over with now that we can finally be done with this series. And then we'll move on to whatever's next. But yeah. So what is the highest reality, the true ideal, the really great adventure? What kind of heroism is called for? And what kind of drama, submission to what kind of God? The religious geniuses of history have argued that to be really submissive means to be submissive to the highest power, the true infinity and absolute, and not to any human substitutes, lovers, leaders, nation-states, ideals, powers, principalities, or copes. That last part I actually added in myself, I believe. But yeah, this is actually the last slide from the last video. I can't remember if I actually put this in there, if I forgot to put it in and added it later. But yeah, that's the question we're pretty much dealing with. I think fundamentally what this place does is it's supposed to show you how feeble and futile it is to try to put any sort of submission or desire into something material, or not even material, just any of these substitutes, lovers, leaders, nation states, ideals, powers, principalities, or copes. Nothing you can try to substitute the true infinity and absolute with. If you try to substitute it with something that isn't infinite and absolute, then it's you're going to squander. But yeah, that's what we're coming to today to talk about. The last couple of videos, I believe, actually, we looked over Kierkegaard's Religious Solution and Freud's artistic, or it was Otto Rank and Freud. They kind of touched on it, both of them. Artistic Solution. So we looked at theirs and kind of looked at where they faltered here and there as well. So we're finally going to come to the conclusions, which is where I'm going to be putting my own thoughts and ideas and theories about all of this. So we'll see. The quote up here is a Shakespeare, proud man, dressed in a little brief authority, most ignorant of what he's most assured, his glassy essence, like an angry ape, plays such fantastic tricks before high heaven as make the angels weep. And yeah, I put that up. I think he actually used this in the book too, but I put that up there as just his glassy essence, like an angry ape, plays such fantastic tricks before high heaven as make the angels weep. That's what it is when you cope. When you try to put all of your hope and desire, I guess, into something finite or not absolute. Or like basically in religious terms, I guess it would be worshiping a different god, or I don't want to say that because like worshiping has such like connotations of like in my perspective, it's not like I used to believe like in what made me like an atheist when I was younger, like a rebellious child or whatever, was like the idea of worship being like, oh, like you're enslaved to God's will, basically. It's either you're enslaved to his will or you burn in hell. And coming to this point, it's more like you make, like, I guess, like, desire and karma, like, you make this happen. Like, the reason you can't go through suffering if you, well, I want to say you can't go through suffering if you have no desire, but as someone who experiences immense physical suffering from like a chronic condition on like a near daily basis, that's, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. But like, the way I think I've mentioned it before, like, people want to live like kings, but nobody wants to act like kings. People want to live like royalty, but nobody wants to act like royalty. It's like people want all the spoils and all the riches and all the pleasures of heaven, but nobody wants to behave like they belong there. And that's one of the hardest things too, is because it's like in both ways life is going to disappoint you, whether you like put all your eggs in a basket that's not going to produce anything, like a cope, like whether you put it into like patriotism or romance or stuff like that. So it's either going to disappoint you in that way, or like if you do like try to go on this path that I'm talking about, like life does a lot of like fucking around with you too, in terms of like it will tempt you and like either way you're going to suffer in life, I think. And the reason for that is like you keep desiring something that isn't God. Like you keep doing these like an angry ape playing such fantastic tricks before a high heaven as make the angels weep. And it's like going back to like the slavery of like, oh, you have to be enslaved to his will or bound to his will. Like it's not like you have, oh my gosh, like it just feels like that's the thing, like it doesn't feel like feelings are a layer of being that are like apart from your essence. Like they're a covering over your essence. Like you feel feelings, but you are not your feelings, right? But when you come to the like talking about like God's will and like to me growing up, like there was I always had the problem with like the 10 Commandments being like, oh, you should not kill, oh, you should not do this. Like it was always what's that called, moralistic in terms of like action, like don't do this, don't do that, don't do, yeah, like it was things to do or not to do, like and to me, in my mind, it always made more sense to me as like, it's not about the actions themselves, it's about being in the mindset of not wanting to do those actions, like being in the like, I want to say mindset, but mindset is just another smaller, like in the same way feelings are, like a mindset. You have a mindset, you're in a mindset, but you are not a mindset. But like, this... If it is true that we are all reflections of God's image, then quote unquote worshiping God or like being enslaved to his will or whatever is actually like, all it is just letting that light, that spark, that essence, that divine reflection just be in control. Like, just like, I don't, like, that's the real you. Anything else, trying to go for pleasure or wealth or comfort, or like, that's all, you're venerating the material body, or like being egoic and like trying to like be one of those like stereotypical self-absorbed, self-obsessed, like academics. Like, yeah, like you're accomplishing stuff, but like you're doing it to satiate your own ego. Like your ego is not you. Your body is not you. And yeah, I think if there is a God, and if we have been given like a spark or a flame or a light, like, why would you, I don't know, like, why would you want to obscure that in any way? Having said all that, let's go ahead and dive in. Both Rank and Kierkegaard reached the same conclusion after the most exhaustive psychological quests, that at the very furthest reaches of scientific description, psychology has to give way to theology. That is, to a worldview that absorbs the individual's conflicts and guilt and offers him possibility for some kind of heroic apotheosis. Man cannot endure his own littleness unless he can translate it into meaningfulness on the largest possible level. Here, Rank and Kierkegaard meet in one of those astonishing historical mergers of thought, that sin and neurosis are two ways of talking about the same thing: the complete isolation of the individual, his disharmony with the rest of nature, his hyper-individualism, his attempts to create his own world from within himself. Both sin and neurosis represent the individual blowing himself up to larger than his true size, his refusal to recognize his cosmic dependence. Neurosis, like sin, is an attempt to force nature to pretend that the causa sui project really suffices. In sin and neurosis, man fetishizes himself on something narrow at hand and pretends that the whole meaning and miraculousness of creation is limited to that he can get his beatification from that. So this is talking about Copes again. Man cannot endure his own littleness unless he can translate it into meaningfulness on the largest possible level. I think from a purely physical, material level, the world is meaningless. And I also believe, you can try to give it meaning in other ways, but I feel like the only way to give it meaning is, like I said, just that divine spark. Translated into meaningfulness on the largest possible level. Yeah. I wouldn't even say it on the largest possible level. It's something that transcends this entire... that's the thing, is, meaning... this entire realm is meaningless. But, transcending that is the only place to find, true meaning, because this realm is not. That is what it is. Both sin and neurosis represent the individual blowing himself up to larger than his true size, his refusal to recognize his cosmic dependence. Sin and neurosis are two ways of talking about the same thing: the complete isolation of the individual, his disharmony with the rest of nature, his hyper-individualism, his attempt to create his own world from within himself. I don't really have much to add to any of this, honestly. I tried. But we know that this attempt is doomed to failure because man simply cannot justify his own heroism. He cannot fit himself into his own cosmic plan and make it believable. He must live with agonizing doubts if he remains in touch at all with the larger reality. Only when he loses this touch do the doubts vanish. And that is the definition of psychosis, a wholly unreal belief in the self-justification of cosmic heroism. I am Christ. In this sense, as Rank said, neurosis represents the striving for, and again, be wary of striving, desire, yearning, an individual religion, a self-achieved immortality. I would say, yes, this is true. I do agree with this. A wholly unreal belief in the self-justification of cosmic heroism. I am Christ. Yes, is with an asterisk, I guess. He must live with agonizing doubts if he remains in touch at all with the larger reality. I would say if you reach, grasp, like, above and beyond just reality, like, you don't have to live with agonizing doubts. I don't know, like, I guess I've I guess I've always had, like, doubts to, like, as to, like, what the specifics are or whatever, but I feel like I've always had strong convictions that there's more to this life than meets the eye. Even when I was, like, a rebellious atheist, like, it was, I always still, like, entertained, like, notions of, like, I forget, there's, like, a term for it, but, like, God being, like, it was really funny, like, I would joke, about it, about, like, God being, like, just, fifth or, like, sixth dimensional being that created this realm. So, like, not even, like, an omnipotent God, but, like, just one that I guess would have omnipotence of this particular realm. But yeah. He must live with agonizing doubts if he remains in touch at all with the larger reality. I guess, like, you might have, like, some, like, minor doubts, but agonizing doubts, no, you don't have to live with them. You can, like, take a good look at what this realm really is, but also, like everything you need is there. Like, the people throughout history, religious, like, figures and mystics have, like, all, like, done their part, and, like, you know, like, each one has paved a brick on the path of, like, hey, like, yeah, this world is meaningless, but come look over here. Like, come check this out. Don't worry about the world. Like, hey, come here. Sin and neurosis have another side. Not only there's unreal self-inflation and the refusal to admit creatureliness, but also a penalty for intensified self-consciousness, the failure to be consoled by shared illusions. The result is that the sinner, or neurotic, is hyper-conscious of the very thing he tries to deny, his creatureliness, his miserableness, and unworthiness. The neurotic is thrown back on his true perceptions of the human condition, which caused his isolation and individuation in the first place. He tried to build a glorified, private, inner world because of his deeper anxieties, but life takes its revenge. The more he separates and inflates himself, the more anxious he becomes. The more he artificially idealizes himself, the more exaggeratedly he criticizes himself. He alternates between the extremes of I am everything and I am nothing. But it is clear that if one is going to be something, he has to be a secure part of something else. There is no way to avoid paying the debt of dependency and yielding to the larger meaning of the rest of nature, to the toll of suffering and the death that it demands. And there is no way to justify this payment from within oneself, no matter how mightily one tries. It is clear that if one is going to be something, he has to be a secure part of something else. Yes and no. I say no because, also, being. I'm reading Schopenhauer right now, and he talks about, will and essence. So when I talk about, desire and yearning and grasping and stuff like that, from that perspective, even, being itself is a type of desire. It's a type of, I want to be this, I want to be that. I know it's contradictory because what we're talking about is pretty much that. Hey, how do you be this, or how do you be like that, or what is this, or what is that? But it's when you're in that, and again, I don't want to call it a mindset because it's more than that. When you're in that zone, when you're in that, essence, it's not being, it's not consciousness. It's deeper than that. It's below, it's unconsciousness. It's below subconsciousness. When you're playing a solo, or if you're doing it well anyways, when you're playing a solo or doing some improv or something like that, or you're in a flow state or something like that, it's, you are not there. There is no ego anymore. That's why I say it's more than a mindset. It's beyond, you're tapping into. It's there's a lucidity to it, but it's not a consciousness lucidity. But yeah, that's the, and again, it's you, the limits of language, you have to say, that's the state of being you want to be in, when it's it's not a state and it's not really being, but it is what it is. These things are these things are hard to talk about because it's not material. It's, you're digging at the roots of essence, at the roots of being, and yeah, it's weird. But now we see the historical difference between the classical sinner and the modern neurotic. Both of them experience the naturalness of human insufficiency. Only today the neurotic is stripped of the symbolic worldview, the God ideology that would make sense out of his unworthiness and would translate it into heroism. Traditional religion turned the consciousness of sin into a condition for salvation. But the tortured sense of nothingness of the neurotic But the tortured sense of nothingness of the neurotic qualifies him now only for miserable extinction, for merciful release in lonely death. It is all right to be nothing vis-a-vis God, who alone can make it right in his unknown ways. It is another thing to be nothing unto oneself, who is nothing. Rank summed it up this way. The neurotic type suffers from a consciousness of sin just as much as did his religious ancestor, without believing in the conception of sin. This is precisely what makes him neurotic. He feels a sinner without the religious belief in sin, for which he therefore needs a new rational explanation. Thus the plight of modern man, a sinner with no word for it, or worse, who looks for the word for it in a dictionary of psychology and thus only aggravates the problem of his separateness and hyperconsciousness. Again, this impasse is what Rank meant when he called psychology a preponderantly negative and disintegrating ideology. Yeah. That's why I always laugh at people who, worship scientism, and quote-unquote rationalism and atheism and whatnot. It's like, when you really get down to, like, quality of life and stuff like that, when, like, how do you, like, philosophically, like, tell or, like, ease a finite creature into like the concept of death, basically. Especially into a death of absolute nothingness. That is the atheist afterworld, or afterlife, I guess. And it's like, and then I know the reaction going to be like, oh, but it's like, what, like, it's more important to believe, quote unquote, the truth, instead of believing in fairy tales or whatever. And it's like, funnily enough, if you are an atheist, like, the quote-unquote truth, like, you're digging at philosophies. Like, you want to say, like, there is this, like, paradigm of truth or whatever, or, like, reality of truth. But man, I don't know how I'm forming this thought. This is hard to do on the fly. I do need to come back to this idea, though. Okay, let's put a pin in this about, like, atheism and, like, the explanation. Because, like, I know the atheist reaction of, like, the fear of death is going to be, oh, you just have to, like, imagine something. Like I said, like, you just have to imagine that God exists or whatever in order to, like, do this or that. And it's like, I feel like in some sense that's, like, I don't know. Like, how would I argue to an atheist that, like, we kind of did it through this series, how, like, the suffering and, like, the dissatisfaction that we have with this life is, like, it's more than just physical suffering. It's more than just psychological suffering. Like, it's not something you can go to therapy for. It's not something you can, like, fix with more materialism or capitalism or money or things or, like, stuff like that. Like, this neuroticism that we feel, it goes much, like, it's a spiritual neuroticism, and, like, that's, like, that, I don't know how else to explain that to an atheist other than, like, going into this series and showing them this, like, level of suffering is, like, okay, so there's two different types of suffering. There's, like, the actual suffering, like, the actual, like, injury of, like, the bodily person or, like, the ego or the psyche. And then there's, like, the suffering of, like, you might be going through an illness, but, like, are you wallowing in self-pity? Are you, like, are you suffering through it? Like, or are you able to, like, have, like, a positive mindset through it? And, like, keep a, like, I want to say keep a smile on your face, but, like, SQS has a video about, like, doing an internal smile, and I think that's really good. It's, like, a 15-minute video, and it's basically just, like, a real quick meditation. But it's, like, one of the best meditations I think I've ever seen. But, yeah. I'll actually, like, yeah, I'll do that right now. So, basically, like, the internal smile is, like, just, like, this isn't gonna, like, you're not gonna sit here and record this one section and be like, oh, this is my meditation now. No, go and watch the tape if you want to actually do the meditation. But the idea is, that you sit down and you, like, make yourself, like, internally smile. Like, you want to keep, like, keep your face relaxed, and, like, you want your internal smile to be so big it, like, gently, like, slightly curves the edge of your lips, but, like, you're not externally smiling. The whole point is to be internally smiling. And, like, just, like, be happy, and, like, find that being happy is a state of mind that you have the freedom to put yourself into. Two, one of the other things you realize is you start being, like, self-conscious about it. Like, you almost feel guilty, like you don't have anything to be happy for. Like, why am I happy? But it's like, who says you need something to be happy? Like, that's that's basically what I'm trying to, like, get at with this whole thing, is, like, not, like, happiness is, like, I'm talking about, like, more of, like, that equanimity, that contentment, that wise, like, go with the flow, calmness with reality. Like, that's, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. This is Rank's devastating Kierkegaardian conclusion. If neurosis is sin and not disease, then the only thing which can cure it is a worldview, some kind of affirmative collective ideology in which the person can perform the living drama of his acceptance as a creature. Only in this way can the neurotic come out of his isolation to become a part of such a larger and higher wholeness as religion has always represented. Does the neurotic lack something outside him to absorb his need for perfection? Does he eat himself up with obsessions? The myth-ritual complex is a social form for the channeling of obsessions. We might say it places creative obsession within the reach of every man, which is precisely the function of ritual. This function is what Freud saw when he talked about this obsessive quality of primitive religion and compared it to neurotic obsession. But he didn't see how natural this was, how all social life is the obsessive ritualization of control in one way or another. It automatically engineers safety and banishes despair by keeping people focused on the noses in front of their faces. And again, like he says, the only thing that can cure it is a collective ideology or a collective illusion in which he can perform the living drama and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's not, yeah, like I said before, like he does this thing where it's like, the only way to do this is this. And it's like, no, like you can also just like be real and like find the actual thing that all the religions are talking about. But yeah. Yeah, I would say most copes. He says the myth-ritual complex is a social form for the channeling of obsessions. Most copes are like that. Most copes are there for people to, like, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking of, like, alcohol. Like, tell an alcoholic friend you don't want to go out tonight, or tell him you don't think he should go out tonight. And watch him, like, cling to his safety blanket of alcoholism and partying, like, real tightly. It's pretty funny. But yeah. The defeat of despair is not mainly an intellectual problem for an active organism, but a problem of self-stimulation via movement. Beyond a given point, man is not helped by more knowing, but only by living and doing in a partly self-forgetful way. Yep, this is the flow state type of stuff I was talking about. As Goethe put it, we must plunge into experience and then reflect on the meaning of it. All reflection and no plunging drives us mad. All plunging and no reflection, and we are brutes. Goethe wrote maxims like these precisely at the time when the individual lost the protective cover of traditional society and daily life became a problem for him. He no longer knew what were the proper doses of experience. This safe dosage of life is exactly what is prescribed by traditional custom, wherein all the important decisions of life and even its daily events are ritually marked out. Neurosis is the contriving of private obsessional ritual to replace the socially agreed one now lost by the demise of traditional society. The customs and myths of traditional society provided a whole interpretation of the meaning of life, ready-made for the individual. All he had to do was accept living it as true. The modern neurotic must do just this if he is to be cured. He must welcome a living illusion. Again, yeah. I probably should have underlined that. All reflection and no plunging drives us mad. All plunging and no reflection, and we are brutes. Yeah, that's a good quote. And then he goes on, it is one thing to imagine this cure, but it is quite another thing to prescribe it to modern man. How hollow it must ring in his ears. For one thing, he can't get living myth ritual complexes, the deep-going inherited social traditions that have so far sustained man, on a prescription form from the corner pharmacy. He can't even get them in mental hospitals or therapeutic communities. The modern neurotic cannot magically find the kind of world he needs, which is one reason he tries to create his own. In this very crucial sense, neurosis is the modern tragedy of man. Historically, he is an orphan. And that's talking about, like, neurosis is the contriving of private obsessional ritual to replace the socially agreed one now lost by the demise of traditional society. So basically, like, it's when we're talking about neurosis and sin being the same thing, it's like the loss of traditional society, and this is just a vague, like, and I know there's like anytime you dive deeper into a subject, there's gonna be like exceptions and qualifications and stuff like that. But anyways, it's like the demise of traditional society, of like being like, oh, like you lived a good enough life if you held a job and married and had children. And it's like nowadays it's like oh yeah, and went to church or whatever. Nowadays it's like all right, but like, are you, now that like the church has gone out of style, that's no longer a thing. But like, it's like are you, like, it's no longer enough just to live a simple life. It's like, are you protesting? Are you voting? Are you involved with the community? Are you spending your money on the right things? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Or to live like a quote unquote like meaningful life, or like a good life or whatever. Like, nobody has an agreed upon thing of what it means to live a good life anymore. And it's like people are all scrambling at like, oh, like, I'm just gonna go and dive into hedonism, or like, oh, I'm just gonna go do this and that. And it's like people, it's like, and it's like, it's become a thing where it's like you can't tell people that they're living their life wrong anymore. Which is fair, I do believe, because it's like, it's not your place to say anyways. It's just it's like, if you and someone else is drowning and you're trying to stay calm and you're trying to save them, but they're freaking out to the point where like they're also gonna drown you, like, you have to let them go. You have to like, it's just like, yeah, like, there's no merit, there's no virtue in being an idiot and like having you both drown trying to save him. I don't know. But yeah. So like, yeah, I get that, like, not, but like, it's become a thing where like, now that there is no social cultural norm, like, people are like, everyone tells each other like, oh yeah, you're doing the right thing, oh yeah, fuck them, yeah, you do you, type shit. And it's like, there is no place for that. Like, okay, hold up, like like, pump the brakes. What are you doing, and why are you doing this then? And why are you, I don't know. Like, it is what it is. It's pretty funny. But yeah. A second reason for the hollowness of our prescription for neurosis follows. If there are no ready-made traditional worldviews into which to fit oneself with dependency and trust, religion becomes a very personal matter. So personal that faith itself seems neurotic, like a private fantasy and a decision taken out of weakness. The one thing modern man cannot do is what Kierkegaard prescribes, the lonely leap into faith, the naive personal trust in some kind of transcendental support for one's life. This support is now independent of living external rituals and customs. The church and the community do not exist, or do not carry much conviction. This situation is what helps make faith fantastic. In order for something to seem true to man, it has to be visibly supported in some ways. Lived, external, compelling. Men need pageants, crowds, panoplies, special days marked off on calendars, an objective focus for obsession, something to give form and body to internal fantasy, something external to yield oneself to. Otherwise, the neurotic is brought back to the point of his departure. How is he to believe in his lonely inner sense of specialness? I think this helps explain the intensive evangelism of so many converts. Offhand, we may wonder why they must continually buttonhole us in the street to tell us how to be as happy as they. If they are so happy, we muse, why are they bugging us? The reason, according to what we have said, must be that they need the conviction of numbers in order to strengthen and externalize something that otherwise remains very private and personal, and so risks seeming fantastic and unreal. To see others like oneself is to believe in oneself. And this is so unfortunate too, because like the path that I'm talking about is like, it's such a lonely path, because like most people don't dive this deep into religion and spirituality and philosophy, and it's like, it's just, if it weren't for like, I've personally had a couple of like spiritual experiences that to this day I still can't explain. I could, but it would take a while. It's that, and like I will say, like, sometimes like egoically I'm like having doubts, because I'm like, am I really doing this? Like, everyone else is sitting here like enjoying the buffet of like, oh, like, take a bite of this, or take a bite of this, or take a bite of this is so good for you, and blah 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 blah. But it's like, this path is like, no, I'll look but I won't eat type shit. And it's just like, are you like the doubt of like, oh, what if you're wrong? What if there really is no meaning to life, and you're just like, torturing yourself or whatever, just trying to do all the, or like trying to stifle down the horse body and the monkey mind, trying to stifle down desire and ego. Like, what if all that is just a farce, or like a pageant or whatever? And it's like, I totally get that, like, doubt, but at the same time, like I said, if it weren't for these couple of like personal spiritual experiences that I've had, and the fact that like the more I research into all of this, the more like everybody's saying the same thing. And I'm talking like, you have to read people's actual books, like the actual like textbooks from, like, you can't just read like this book, for example. Like, I know he does it a lot too. Like, he quotes Rank, and he quotes Kierkegaard, and he quotes Freud, and I'll point out like where he's like wrong and stuff like that, but you don't get the biases, or you don't actually get like, it's so much better every single time to go and actually read direct from the primary source. Like, not to, like, I'll skip the introductions at this point. Like, there's no point in reading someone's opinion on what the book might be. Like, read it for yourself, and you'll find that a lot of people actually get some stuff wrong. But yeah. But yeah, the whole point I'm trying to say is like, I totally get that. Like, I totally get the doubts, and like being active in life, and like dealing with people face to face on a daily basis. Like, yeah, like it's hard to believe these things, and to see them live in the type of reality that they live in. But like I said, at the same time, like, if it weren't for those experiences, if it weren't for all this research I've put into this, and seeing like the greatest minds of human history all talk, reference, quote, mention, vaguely or not vaguely, like this eternal, universal, like, knowledge or wisdom or whatever, like, it's like, how can you How can you doubt it? I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, a third problem is that modern man is a victim of his own disillusionment. He has been disinherited by his own analytic strength. The characteristic of the modern mind is the banishment of mystery, of naive belief, of simple-minded hope. Before I get into this, sorry, let me go back into that. Like, yeah, it's where I was like, how can you doubt it? And it's like, doubts are not rational. Doubts are not, like, a doubt is a feeling. And, like, yeah, you're still gonna feel doubt. And, like, yeah, part of me is like, damn, I wish this wasn't true. And, like, I wish I could just go and take a bite or whatever. And it's like, ugh. Like, yeah, it is, like, you do have to, like, have some sense of self-control and, like I said, stifling the horse body, monkey mind. But, yeah. Basically, like, how can you doubt any of this? And it's like, you have to, like, I have to talk myself into it when the doubts come up. It's like, come on, like, we look at this, we've talked about this, we've studied this, this is what the Bible says, this is what the Vedas say, like, stuff like that. Like, it's, yeah. The doubts are gonna, I would say, like, doubts are probably gonna happen, but it's just a matter of, like, not being in the right mindset, I guess. But yeah. A third problem is that modern man is the victim of his own disillusionment. He has been disinherited by his own analytic strength. The characteristic of the modern mind is the banishment of mystery, of naive belief, of simple-minded hope. We put the accents on the visible, the clear, the cause and effect relation, the logical. Always the logical. We know the difference between dreams and reality, between facts and fictions, between symbols and bodies. But right away, we can see that these characteristics of the modern mind are exactly those of neurosis. What typifies the neurotic is that he knows his situation vis-a-vis reality. He has no doubts. There's nothing you can say to sway him, to give him hope or trust. He is a miserable animal whose body decays, who will die, who will pass into dust and oblivion. Disappear forever, not only in this world, but in all the possible dimensions of the universe, whose life serves no conceivable purpose, who may as well have not been born, and so on and so forth. He knows truth and reality, the motives of the entire universe. And that's, yeah, like I said, that's the the atheist or whatever of modernity. It was G.K. Chesterton who kept alive the spirit of Kierkegaard in naive Christianity and modern thought, as when he showed with such style that the characteristics the modern mind prides itself on are precisely those of madness. There is no one more logical than the lunatic, more concerned with the minutiae of cause and effect. Madmen are the greatest reasoners we know, and that trait is one of the accompaniments of their undoing. All their vital processes are shrunken into the mind. What is the one thing they lack that sane men possess? The ability to be careless, to disregard appearances, to relax and laugh at the world. They can't unbend, can't gamble their whole existence, as did Pascal, on a fanciful wager. They can't do what religion has always asked, to believe in a justification of their lives that seems absurd. The neurotic knows better. He is the absurd, but nothing else is absurd. It is only too true. But faith asks that man expand himself trustingly into the non-logical, into the truly fantastic. This spiritual expansion is the one thing that modern man finds most difficult, precisely because he is constricted into himself and has nothing to lean on. No collective drama that makes fantasy seem real because it is lived and shared. Yeah. Let me hasten to assure the reader that I am not developing an apologia for traditional religion, but only describing the impoverishment of the modern neurotic and some of the reasons for it. I want to give some background for understanding how centrally Rank himself stands in the tradition of Pascal, Kierkegaard, and Chesterton on the problem of faith and illusion or creative play. As we have learned from Huizinga and more recent writers like Joseph Piper and Harvey Cox, the only secure truth men have is that which they themselves create and dramatize. to live is to play at the meaning of life. The upshot of this whole tradition of thought is that it teaches us once and for all that childlike foolishness is the calling of mature men. Just this way, Rank prescribed the cure for neurosis as the need for legitimate foolishness. The problem of the union of religion, psychiatry, and social science is contained in this one formula. And I kind of talked about this before. Is this the one? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did mention Deep Play before, which is a book I would probably recommend reading. I remember I read it first when I was 18 or so, but I lost the book before I read too far into it, and then so I got it again years later and started reading it, and the first few chapters were really good from what I remember, but then after that it just kind of dissolves into whatever. You really only need the first 2 or 3 chapters to read just to get the concept of this deep play. And I think it's it is I don't know if it's an essence of me or whatever, but the carelessness, not the carelessness, the carefreeness of just doing it's of course this world is gonna suffer, of course this world sucks, but just do me, for example, I'll just draw or play the piano, write music, and it's just the world can't take that from me, in the sense of I don't know, just that if we're going back, we're talking about the flow state again, just that tapping into that divine spark or whatever. Also there's not this it's not this overt oh, holiness, I'm gonna walk around and act like I'm the next incarnation of Jesus Christ or whatever and act divine. It's there's this playfulness to it. There's this there's no you don't stand on ceremony. It's you I don't know, it's just things just I don't know. He calls it childlike foolishness. But it is in a sense childlike foolishness, but I don't know. To live is to play at the meaning of life. This I would say, yeah. Because I guess anybody dealing with copes, any type of cope, you're playing as if that, whatever that thing is gonna offer you I don't want to say eternal life, but salvation, in the sense that you are saved when that thing satisfies you. And you are damned when it doesn't. To live is to play at the meaning of life. Yeah, so you play around and you say that, you'll do that with a cope, not knowing that, well, haha, joke's on you, no cope is gonna last, so you are gonna be damned eventually if you keep desiring that cope, you can't, yeah, it is what it is. I would still recommend that book. It's such a good concept that just buying the book just to discover that whole conception is, I would say, is worth it, even if 70% of the book is probably unnecessary. It's still worth the full price just to play with that idea. But yeah. We said earlier that the question of human life is, on what level of illusion does one live? This question poses an absolutely new question for the science of mental health, namely, what is the best illusion under which to live? Or, what is the most legitimate foolishness? If you are going to talk about life-enhancing illusion, then you can truly try to answer the question of which is the best. You will have to define best in terms that are directly meaningful to man, related to his basic condition and his needs. I think the whole question would be answered in terms of how much freedom, dignity, and hope a given illusion provides. These three things absorb the problem of natural neurosis and turn it into creative living. And like he's still talking about it from like a secular atheistic perspective of like, oh yeah, it's an illusion, so like which is the best one that we can do? And he's like, from a rational perspective, I think the whole question is about like how much freedom, dignity, and hope a given illusion provides. And it's like like he's wrong in calling it an illusion, but he's not wrong in the sense that like, yeah, like the if you settle with a cope, it's not going to give you the much freedom, dignity, or hope. Like your only hope is going to be for that cope. It's not going to give you much freedom because it's like you are happy when you have that cope and you are sad when you don't have that cope. That's not freedom. Like going back into the like smiling, the internal smile, like that's not true freedom. Is like, yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, and it doesn't give you much dignity because you're going to spend your whole time groveling and trying to satiate yourself with that cope. So like, yeah, so he's not wrong there. But yeah, these three things absorb the problem of natural neurosis and turn it to creative living. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what religion does too. That's what it's supposed to do anyways. Yeah. We have to look for the answer to the problem of freedom where it is most absent, in the transference, the fatal and crushing enslaver of men. The transference fetishizes mystery, terror, and power. It holds the self bound in its grip. Religion answers directly to the problem of transference by expanding awe and terror to the cosmos where they belong. It also takes the problem of self-justification and removes it from the objects near at hand. We no longer have to please those around us, but the very source of creation, the powers that created us, not those into whose lives we accidentally fell. Our life ceases to be a reflexive dialogue with the standards of our wives, husbands, friends, and leaders, and becomes instead measured by standards of the highest heroism, ideals truly fit to lead us on and beyond ourselves. In this way, we can lean on powers that really support us and do not oppose us. The personality can truly begin to emerge in religion because God, as an abstraction, does not oppose the individual as others do, but instead provides the individual with all the power necessary for independent self-justification. What greater security than to lean confidently on God, on the fount of creation, the most terrifying power of all? If God is hidden and intangible, all the better. That allows man to expand and develop by himself. And I think all of this is like, yeah, this is what life is supposed to be anyways. Like the whole, finding the highest, I wouldn't call it heroism, but like finding ideals fit to lead us on and beyond ourselves. Like, yeah, that's, that's, yeah, welcome to life. But yeah. He says the personality can truly begin to emerge in religion because God, as an abstraction, does not oppose the individual as others do, but instead provides the individual with all the power necessary for independent self-justification. Yep. Individuation. I guess. Like, I guess in that sense, it would be like me, for example, like I've obviously like people get like, okay, obviously you have to have a job. So that's not like a distraction or anything. That's just a basic necessity of living in our society, is just having a job and having to work for food and shelter and this and that. I would say that other things, like what I do in my free time, whether that was like what am I trying to say? Like, for example, okay, like I'll take an example, like me being trying to find a relationship, knowing that it's like a distraction for me in this spirit, in at least in my like personal spiritual journey. The personality can truly begin to emerge in religion because God, as an abstraction, does not oppose the individual as others do. So like when I do like fall in love or whatever, it's like my personality is subsumed by a personality that basically isn't me. Like, I don't know, I just become like jealous, selfish, needy. But also on that same vein, it's like it becomes a thing of like I'm trying to fit myself into a mold that I don't fit into, in terms of like being in a relationship or being in love. So me like trying to shove myself into that, it's like I have to mold or force my personality to be a particular way that it isn't. And it's like when I forego that, if I stop trying to do like love as a cope, or like being like desiring it or whatever, yearning for it, like the personality can truly begin to emerge in religion because God, as an abstraction, does not oppose the individual as others do. So like I'm like, that's not like, I feel like I'm a much, like my life is richer because I feel like fuller as a person when I'm not like fucking bound by passion. In the same way, like drugs were the same way too. Like I like being forced to like, or being bound to like not so much the drugs themselves, the social company you keep trying to like be around certain drugs. It's like you have to like mold yourself into like fitting in with that crowd in a sense. And it's just like basically any sort of, that's gonna happen with any sort of cope. Like you're gonna like have to like, it's going to mold you and like limit you in some way, unless, like he says, you're not doing a cope, you're actually like finding that transcendent ideal concept of God. But yeah. Best of all, of course, religion solves the problem of death, which no living individuals can solve, no matter how they would support us. Religion, then, gives the possibility of heroic victory in freedom and solves the problem of human dignity at its highest level. The two ontological motives of the human condition are both met: the need to surrender oneself in full to the rest of nature, to become a part of it by laying down one's whole existence to some higher meaning, and the need to expand oneself as an individual heroic personality. Finally, religion alone gives hope, because it holds open the dimension of the unknown and unknowable, the fantastic mystery of creation that the human mind cannot even begin to approach, the possibility of a multidimensionality of spheres of existence, of heavens and possible embodiments that make a mockery of earthly logic. And in doing so, it relieves the absurdity of earthly life, all the impossible limitations and frustrations of living matter. In religious terms, to see God is to die, because the creature is too small and finite to be able to bear the higher meaning of creation. Religion takes one's very creatureliness, one's significance, and makes it a condition of hope. Full transcendence of the Full transcendence of the human condition means limitless possibility unimaginable to us. Yeah. Religion solves the problem of death, which no living individuals can solve, no matter how they would support us. That's, I would say death is spiritual. Okay, so on some level, it is like animalistic in terms of like just that basic like perseverance of life is such a fundamental urge for animals. But on the other side, like death is like a spiritual thing too, because it's like, well, first off, like spiritually you were shoved into existence and you got to be snuffed out just as forcefully and ungracefully, and it's just like, yeah, so no cope really can solve that, and like he says, unless you go into the fantastic mystery of creation that the human mind cannot even begin to approach, the possibility of a multidimensionality of spheres of existence, of heavens and possible embodiments that make a mockery of earthly logic. And in doing so, it relieves the absurdity of earthly life. All the impossible limitations and frustrations of living matter. Like, yeah, that's what it, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that's what it does. Like, it's so funny because, like, he's talking about it from, like, a secular perspective, and, like, he recognizes this. It's like, yeah, this is what they talk about, and it's like, yeah, that's the point. But, yeah. In religious terms, to see God is to die because the creature is too small and finite to be able to bear the higher meaning of creation. Religion takes one's very creatureliness, one's insignificance, and makes it a condition of hope. So, in religious terms, to see God is to die because a creature is too small and finite to be able to bear the higher meaning of creation. Yeah, like, and it's hard for me because I feel like on some level, like, I've intuitively known a lot of this stuff to begin with, but, like, once you get into, like, the nitty-gritty of, like, what this world really is and how meaningless it is, but also, like, how much more there is to everything than just this realm. Seeing how insignificant this realm really is, seeing how, or what you are, and I don't know, man, like, just seeing all of this stuff is like, it, like, you do, like, go through this, I guess, like, if you're doing psychedelics, the term would be, like, ego death, but, like, it's more than that. It's like your ideals die, in a sense. Like, you stop going, like, all these copes that you start going for, like, die. Like, I say that, but, like, they don't, you still have to deal with temptation, and desire is still, like, something that, like, wafts its fumes over your nose, but, like, yeah, basically, like, seeing God, seeing all of this stuff that I've been talking about, all this religion, spirituality, getting so far deep into it, like, you do, like, become a different person. Like, you're not, you can't be, like, I cannot be the type of person, me personally, after doing all of this, I cannot be the type of person that has a child. I just can't. Like, that's, like, that, like, yeah, like that's a life of, or like a path or whatever, that like he says to see God is to die, because the creature is too small and finite to be able to bear the higher meaning of creation. Like I cannot settle on a lower meaning. Like I have, like there's no, like I can't, like like that part's dead. Like that's not gonna I like, you cannot go back once you've taken these steps far enough. But yeah, it is what it is. What is the ideal for mental health then? A lived, compelling illusion that does not lie about life, death, and reality. One honest enough to follow its own commandments. I mean, not to kill, not to take the lives of others to justify itself. Rank saw Christianity as a truly great ideal foolishness in this. Rank saw Christianity as a truly great ideal foolishness in the sense that we have been discussing it. A childlike trust and hope for the human condition that left open the realm of mystery. Obviously, all religions fall short of their own ideals, and Rank was talking about Christianity not as practiced, but as an ideal. Christianity, like all religions, has in practice reinforced the regressive transference into an even more choking bind. The fathers are given the sanction of divine authority. But as an ideal, Christianity, on all the things we have listed, stands high, perhaps even highest in some vital ways, as people like Kierkegaard, Chester, the Niebuhrs, and so many others have compellingly argued. The curious thing, as we can now fully appreciate it, is that Rank, after a lifetime of work, drew the circle of psychoanalysis itself on this tradition of thought. In this, he stands side by side with Jung, as Progoff so well showed. Yet, what are we to say about this problem if even Jung, who always relied on God, could still faint away with the burden of life? Probably in the last analysis only this, that all men are here to use themselves up, and the problem of ideal illusion doesn't spare any man from that. It only addresses the question of the best quality of work and life that men can achieve, depending on the beliefs they have and powers they lean on. And this subject, as we said, is a matter for discussion by the empirical science of psychology itself. We have to reason about the highest actualization that man can achieve. At its ultimate point, the science of psychology meets again the questioning figure of Kierkegaard. What worldview? What powers? For what heroism? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to answer these questions. So my conclusions. We're going to talk about these things in order. Calling / seeking for a higher power / knowledge of a higher dimension than just the material to overcome the fear of death and reliance on copes. Yeah, so that's your first step. Like, I don't think atheism really says it overcomes the fear of death the way they say it does. They're just like, oh, it is what it is. It's like, yeah, but you're still like clinging on to like meaning or like life itself in some way. Like, like, I don't know. You'll cling on to a philosophy or something. But yeah, so that's the first step, is like just as basic, like it's like people call it a calling, like people like it's something that like there is something more to this life than what atheism wants you to believe, and it's just that first step of like curiosity, of like going out and like looking at all of it, and then like coming to an understanding of this higher dimension than just the material, to overcome the fear of death and reliance on copes. Yeah. And step 2, I guess, would be the reorienting oneself to oneself. It's the stuff I've talked before. Living life as if you are in heaven, or as if you belong in heaven, or the school of life concept. Also includes stoicism. I've talked about deep play in the flow state already, and grace and detachment. Artistic endeavor / life work. And then I hope I'll be able to talk about that more. Basically it's like combining Kierkegaard's religious solution of like that calling, seeking for a higher power, or that knowledge of the higher dimension. So that's going to be Kierkegaard's religious solution. And then the artistic endeavor or life's work is Otto Rank's artistic solution. So we're combining the two. And it's always this thing of like, religion always has this scruple about like, we're a religion of works. We're a works-based faith, or works-based religion, or we're a faith-based religion. It's like, I think the different, like, basically a works-based religion is like, you have to do certain things, like you have to pay your tithes to the church, or you have to marry properly and have children and this and that to do to earn your ticket into heaven, basically. And faith-based religions are more like, no, all you have to do is believe in God. Like, you can sin and do all this and that, but like, as long as you ask for forgiveness, as long as you still believe, like you are admitted into heaven. And it's like, they always talk about like them being against one another, and it's like, why would a works-based religion not also be faithful? And then why would, well, actually, yeah, no, that's irrelevant. But why would a faith-based religion like not also like encourage great works, I guess? Or like not like encourage, like that, not use them as like a requirement. And like great works or like artistic endeavor, life's work is just like going back up to the reorienting oneself to oneself. It's living as if you are in heaven, as if you belong in heaven. It's like people want to enjoy the spoils and the riches of heaven, but like nobody wants to act like they belong there, act like they behave like they live there. From my point of view, an artistic endeavor, a life's work of like being like, for example, in the flow state and like creating masterpiece art works. It's not so much like the work itself, or like it's basically like what if you belong in heaven, what are you going to be doing up there? Like, what are you going to be doing up there? And if you're using your divine spark down here to create, to do something artistic, I guess, or it doesn't even have to be artistic. If you're using your divine spark to like to build a dog nursery or thing because you really love dogs, for example, like that's like that's you using that divine spark just to like, that is an artistic endeavor. That's a life's work. That's a great work, or something that like, it doesn't have to be so grandiose. It's just like, what would you do if you were in heaven? If you were in heaven and like art was an easy thing that you didn't have to like spend years learning and mastering and doing, like, what would you be doing in heaven? What would you be drawing? What would you know, like, that's basically the best way I can describe that. And it's like, for the faith-based religions, it's like, why wouldn't you already encourage something like that in this life? Like, why do you have to be so, like, I get that, like, saying like, oh no, like you don't have to, like it's not required to get into heaven. We want everyone to get into heaven. And it's like, I get that, but like, why are you so staunchly opposed even to the idea of doing any great works or doing any artistic endeavor? Like, that's a red flag for me, I guess. Like, why wouldn't you like, if you truly belong in heaven, like, why aren't you already acting like it? Why aren't you already like already doing all of that, you know? It's funny. It is what it is. But yeah, so fear of death / reliance on copes. Yeah, I did. Okay, so I brought out all of this. So we're gonna talk about this concept of like, you'll see. A combination of his parents, his social group, and the symbols of his society and nation. This is the unthinking web of support, which allows him to believe in himself as he functions on the automatic security of delegated powers. And then we have merely the second-hand, intermediate creators of society, the parents and the panoply of cultural heroes. These are the social and cultural progenitors who themselves have been caused, who themselves are embedded in a web of someone else's powers. Demolish all your unconscious power linkages or supports. The destruction of the self through facing up to the anxiety of the terror of existence. The self must be destroyed, brought down to nothing, in order for self-transcendence to begin. Then the self can begin to relate itself to powers beyond itself. It has to thresh about in its finitude. It has to die in order to question that finitude, in order to see beyond it. To what? Kierkegaard answers, to infinitude, to absolute transcendence, to the ultimate power of creation which made finite creatures. So these are the copes that I'm talking about, and the fear of death, like, is present. So what you do is like you cling on to these things, or like society like does it, like this is the web, these ideas of like, oh, I'm gonna find my salvation, and it's like a subconscious thing, because it's not like salvation in the sense of like I'm going to heaven or I'm going to live forever, but it's like salvation in the sense that like in this moment, in this state, all is well. And that's what copes do. Like they make you think that when, like that's the only time that can be. But yeah, all of these, like unconscious power linkages or supports, the unthinking web of support, embedded in webs of other people's powers. All these things this is the matrix web. I have this scene. Like, this is what keeps you plugged into the... Oh, man. This is going to go so over, like, people's heads, too. I think this is so funny. This is, like, the Matrix. This is the unthinking web of, like... This is what keeps you plugged into, like, oh, yeah, let me stay plugged in. Let me keep going after drugs. Let me keep going after sex. Let me keep going after... this and that. Keep my eyes focused on the screen. Don't think about anything beyond it. Don't think about spirituality. Don't think about like your soul and this and that. Like these are the webs that like keep you locked into your like, don't find your individual personality. Just follow along to the social norms, or like just submit yourself to this cope, submit yourself to this, and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Matrix. Like, yeah, I think that's funny. This is a quote from Dune. I must not fear. Fear is a mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me, and when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. So yeah, using, like, I hesitate to say that, like, atheism can't cope with the fear of death, because like I guess there is a way to like secularly be able to like own up to and face and like confront this fear of death and conquer it, in a sense. But what the modern atheism is not going to be that. Basically, it's not going to offer that, or it might say it offers that, but it's not going to deliver. But yeah. Yeah. The true heroic validation of one's life lies beyond sex, beyond the other, beyond the private religion. All these are makeshifts that pull man down or that hem him in, leaving him torn with ambiguity. Man feels inferior precisely when he lacks true inner values in the personality, when he is merely a reflex of something next to him and has no steadying inner gyroscope, no centering in himself. And in order to get such centering, man has to look beyond the thou, beyond the conditions of others and of the things of this world. Yeah. All these are makeshifts that pull man down or that hem him in, leaving him torn with ambiguity. Yeah. But yeah. Man must break through the bounds of merely cultural heroism. He must destroy the character lie that had him perform as a hero in everyday social scheme of things. And by doing so, he opens himself up to infinity, to the possibility of cosmic heroism, to the very service of God. His life thereby acquires ultimate value in place of merely social and cultural historical value. He links his secret inner self, his authentic talent, his deepest feelings of uniqueness, his inner yearning for absolute significance, to the very ground of creation. Out of the ruins of the broken cultural self there remains the mystery of the private, invisible inner self which yearned, red flag, for ultimate significance, for cosmic heroism. This invisible mystery at the heart of every creature now attains cosmic significance by affirming its connection with the invisible mystery at the heart of creation. This is the meaning of faith. He links his secret inner self, his authentic talent, his deepest feelings of uniqueness, his inner yearning for absolute significance, to the very ground of creation. And again, watch out for that yearning one, too. I can't believe I missed that one, but got the other one. That's funny. Yeah, so when he says to the very ground of creation, like what I was saying earlier, like, if that divine spark, that luminous reflection of God that you have, like, that's what you should be linking your secret inner self, your authentic talent, your deep feeling of uniqueness, etc., to that. Like, that's the ground of creation. I guess if you go from the idea of like eminence being a thing of like the foundation of reality is that like things are emanated from God himself, then I guess you could say that like I don't know. I don't know what I was saying there. Something about like the ground of creation, I think, or linking it to yourself. Dang, I really don't know where I was going. Okay. Reorienting oneself to oneself. Living a life as if you're in heaven, as if you belong in heaven. Let me see. Okay. School of life, stoicism, SQS, going within, deep play flow state, and avoiding the trap of nihilism, grace, ease of effort and detachment, individualization and actualization. Living life as if you're in heaven, as if you belong in heaven. I've been talking about that. That's the whole artistic endeavor of like, or like your life's work of like, what are you gonna do in heaven? Like, if you were in heaven, what would you be doing, and why can't you do it now? But yeah, School of Life is just like the idea of like life is here as a lesson. They say suffering is in the world. Like basically like you're going to suffer because it's meant as like a lesson to like not try to find salvation in material things, and it's like suffering is there so you turn to God, basically. Stoicism / SQS going within. Stoicism is really good. It's to me, Stoicism is like, it's not on the same level, but it's the same concept of like the commandments being like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. And it's like, no, find the mindset where you don't want to do these things. And like Stoicism to me is the same way. Like, it's very good commandments of like, oh, don't worry about this, or like be rational and think things through. And it's like, yeah, like it's all well and good to talk about like what the ideal mindset is, but like how do you get there? You know, like how do you how do you stay there type shit. So that's Stoicism. SQS is, I think, a really good, like, don't like I said, like earlier when we talked about like to see God is to die. Like, don't go into SQS unless you're ready for your life to change, basically. Like, unless you're ready to like forego. You might have like passions and desires that you had before that, like, once you like start going on the spiritual path, are not going to be the same anymore whatsoever. Or like behaviors and like personality type and quirks and stuff like that. Like you might completely change. You don't know. But yeah, SQS and going within, reorienting oneself to oneself. So like going within, it's so cliche, and it's like, it's hard to describe. But my poetry, funnily enough, when I talk about like the turbid waters of the mind, going within and being able to like still those waters, and also like studying like the five what are the five things of non-being or whatever from Buddhism. But yeah, just being able to go within and be able to discern what is you and what isn't you, is a really, good practice to get into. Deep play / flow state and avoiding the trap of nihilism. Nihilism is like the idea of like, nothing matters, so like what's the point of anything? Why can't we just subject ourselves to hedonism, or like try to increase like just basic physical comfort and pleasure? Nihilism is also like despair of like, oh, like I'm going to suffer, so what's the point of anything type shit. And it's like that like, in order to combat nihilism, you have to have that childlike innocence, or like what do they call it? Yeah, like the childlike innocence of like having that deep play mindset of like, oh, nothing matters, well then let me go ahead and have some fun. And I say that, but like not in the sense of like in the sense of like heavenly, like if you living as if you are in heaven, or as if you belong in heaven. Like, what kind of fun would that be? That sounded weird coming out. That made it sound like I was saying like, what kind of fun would that be, you know? That wouldn't be any fun. No, what I mean is like, what kind of fun would you have if you lived in heaven, or if you belonged in heaven? And that's like that's what you would be doing with the deep play and flow state, and it helps. That type of mindset helps you avoid the trap of nihilism and like wallowing in despair. But yeah, grace / ease of effort and detachment. Yeah, there is. This kind of goes in line with the deep play too, of just like detachment coming from Buddhism. Grace, like just having that natural, just like, oh, Like, there was a, funny, she's probably gonna, call me out, but, there was a, body language, one of those body language, experts or whatever, experts, quote unquote, on YouTube. They would talk about this when someone's, like, speaking their truth, like, their body sings with them, in a sense. And it's, like, that concept of, like, having that grace of, like, oh, if you're in the flow, like, it's, like, yeah. I don't know, like, that grace / ease of effort. And then individualization and actualization. Yeah, just going back to the whole, like, if you settle for a cope is going to limit you and not let you fully individualize or fully come into your being or your person, your spirit. What is the one thing neurotics lack that sane men possess? The ability to be careless, to disregard appearances, to relax and laugh at the world. They can't unbend, can't gamble their whole existence, as did Pascal, on a fanciful wager. They can't do what religion has always asked, to believe in a justification of their lives that seems absurd. The neurotic knows better. He is the absurd, but nothing else is absurd. It is only too true. But faith asks that man expand himself trustingly into the non-logical, into the truly fantastic. Yeah. I just think it's funny. The neurotic knows better. He is the absurd, but nothing else is absurd. It is only too true. It's like, my life is, like, the suffering that I experience is absurd, but, like, life isn't absurd. It just is what it is. And it's like, okay, funny. School of Life. These are just some things that I wrote. When I first, like, wrote this down into the PowerPoint, this, like, just came to my head. So the School of Life. Some things you just get. Some things are easy to learn. Some things you have to repeat lessons to understand. And some things you may never learn. And that's okay. You don't have to pass every class in the School of Life. However, there are some you cannot fail. But an honest, earnest effort or endeavor goes a long, long way. Yeah. And this is Plotinus's... this is one of Plotinus's works. I can't remember which one. But basically, it's breaking down the nature of the soul. And so he's talking about... the different types of virtue. Like, there's a civic virtue of, like, oh, like, it's your civic duty to vote. But is it, like, a virtue, like, in the sense of, like, be like God? Like, be, acts as if you're in the image of God? And, like, a type of virtue that basically brings you closer to God. Like, a civic virtue versus, like, an actual virtue, like courage or piousness or something like that. You know? So anyways, he says, to Plato, unmistakably, there are two distinct orders of virtue, and the civic does not suffice for likeness. Likeness to God, he says, is a flight from this world's ways and things. Is a flight from this world's ways and things. Yeah. In dealing with the qualities of good citizenship, he does not use the simple term virtue, but adds a distinguishing word for civic, and elsewhere he declares all the virtues without exception to be purifications. Yeah, so this is what we're talking about. Being virtuous is a purification process for the soul. But in what sense can we call the virtues purifications, and how does purification issue in likeness? As the soul is evil by being interfused with the body, and by coming to share the body states and to think the body's thoughts, so it would be good, it would be possessed of virtue, if it threw off the body's moods and devoted itself to its own act, the state of intellection and wisdom, never allowed the passions of the body to affect it, the virtue of sophrosiny, knew no fear at the parting from the body, the virtue of fortitude, and if reason and the intellectual principle ruled, in which state is righteousness. Such a disposition in the soul becomes thus intellective and immune to passion. It would not be wrong to call likeness to God, for the divine too is pure, and the divine act is such that likeness to it is wisdom. Such a disposition in the soul becomes thus intellective and immune to passion. It would not be wrong to call likeness to God. Being transcending the animal material limitations of the body. Would this not make a virtue a state of the divine also? No, the divine has no states. The state is in the soul. The act of intellection in the soul is not the same as in the divine. Of things in the supreme, soul grasps some after a mode of its own, some not at all. Then yet again, the one word intellection covers two distinct acts. Rather, there is a primal intellection, and then there is intellection deriving from the primal and of other scope. As speech is the echo of the thought in the soul, so thought in the soul is an echo from elsewhere. That is to say, as the uttered thought is an image of the soul thought, so the soul thought images a thought above itself and is the interpreter of the higher sphere. Virtue, in the same way, is a thing of the soul. It does not belong to the intellectual principle or to the transcendence. We come so to the question whether purification is the whole of this human quality. Virtue. We come so to the question whether purification is the whole of this human quality, virtue, or merely the forerunner upon which virtue follows. Does virtue imply the achieved state of purification, or does the mere process suffice to it? Virtue being something of less perfection than the accomplished pureness, which is almost the term. To have been purified is to have cleansed away everything alien, but goodness is something more. If before the impurity entered there was goodness, the goodness suffices. But even so, not the act of cleansing, but the cleansed thing that emerges will be the good. And it remains to establish what this emergent is. So he's talking, So, like, virtues, like the whole process of, like, be virtuous, be kind, be obedient, be courageous, pious, stuff like that. The virtues themselves are not the good. The virtues that they're talking about is just like a cleansing process of purification for the soul. So the goodness or whatever is the soul that comes out after the cleansing. So like the virtues themselves are not the goodness. Are the good. That's nice. It can scarcely prove to be the good. The absolute good cannot be thought to have taken up its abode with evil. We can think of it only as something of the nature of good, but paying a double allegiance, unable to rest in the authentic good. The soul's true good is in devotion to the intellectual principle, its kin. Evil to the soul lies in frequenting strangers. There is no other way for it than to purify itself and so enter into relation with its own. The new phase begins by a new orientation. After the purification, then, there is still this orientation to be made? No. By the purification, the true alignment stands accomplished. The soul's... Okay, so yeah. The soul's virtue, then, is this alignment? No, it is what the alignment brings about within. Okay. Going back. The soul's true good is in devotion to the intellectual principle, its kin. Evil to the soul lies in frequenting strangers. So, like, I guess metaphorically speaking, this would be, the intellectual principle would also be, like, the divine absolute And then evil to the soul lies in frequenting strangers. Evil in the soul or sin, and thereby neurosis in the soul is frequenting strangers, or in other words, having copes. But yeah, there is no other way for it than to purify itself and so enter into relation with its own, orienting oneself to itself. Orienting oneself to oneself. And then he says, after the purification, then, there is still this orientation to be made. And he says, no, by the purification, the true alignment stands accomplished. And then he's talking about, like, the soul's virtue as opposed to, like, civic virtue. So he says, the soul's virtue, then, is this alignment. Like, getting into this alignment, is that the virtue? And he says, no, it is what the alignment brings about within that is the virtue. And that is the soul's virtue. And he says, and this is, that it sees, that, like sight affected by the thing seen, the soul admits the imprint, graven upon it and working within it, of the vision it has come to. But was it not the soul possessed of all this always, or had it forgotten? What it now sees is certainly always possessed, but as lying away in the dark, not as acting within it. To dispel the darkness, and thus come to knowledge of its inner content, it must thrust towards the light. When did I add that? Oh, this is why. Okay. So this guy, I was like, why did I add this guy? This was such a random. So, first off, 10 years ago, 19K views, 335 likes, 762 subscribers. Mwah. I love hidden and obscure channels like this. Yeah. So this guy talks about the Ahriman, which is, I want to say he is a Babylonian god, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, we're talking about him. James Lyon 9 years ago, which I think would be 10 years ago at this point. He says, brilliant work. Ahriman's number one hate is stagnance. This is actually a test. If he plants the... Oh yeah, this is under the viewpoint of, like, the devil being... the devil being God's right hand man. Basically, like, there's this concept in certain religions of, like, the devil is not evil. He's literally just doing God's work. Like, he's there to tempt you, and if you are tempted, then he punishes you. Like, that's he's been stationed that duty by God, in a sense. So basically, this is talking about it from that sense. So he's talking about Ahriman in place of Satan, I guess, or like there's different concepts of, and like once you dive into all this stuff, talking about like Ahriman, Lucifer, Satan, all these different conceptions, like you just have to, it is what it is. But yeah, Ahriman's number one hate is stagnance. This is actually test. If he plants these seeds and we forget our spirituality, then that soul does not deserve to have soul, and he sees that as his right to have that soul. Where if you have your spirituality stripped and you find your way back there, then you will have grown a concrete foundation for your soul by learning to trust and listen to it. Progression through adversary and predator has the right to prey on stagnance. It is weakness. Survival of the spiritually fittest. I thought that was funny. I upvoted that one. But yeah, just that idea of like, oh yeah, reorienting oneself to oneself. So this is the idea of what movie was this? Watchmen. So Dr. Manhattan, through science and comic book logic, ended up being this like basically like a divine being in a sense. But like so this last line, if you have your spirituality stripped and you find your way back there, then you will have grown a concrete foundation for your soul by learning to trust and listen to it. So like just like everyone is born into this world not knowing anything, not like being ignorant and stuff like that. If you're able to like do this, like find your piece, or like bring your pieces back together. Osiris, the myth of Osiris, and like bringing himself back together, all his pieces back together, is one of the things that emulates this concept. But yeah, like and then Dr. Manhattan and Watchmen, like one of the villains in there tries to like basically rip him apart, like atom by atom, and he says, you fool. He said, reassembling myself was the first trick I learned. But yeah, just like that idea of like being born into this realm of ignorance, like and then finding God in a place like this, in a realm so lost, so blind, so what's that, like smoky, like just so obscured. If you're able to go through this process and like forge out your spirituality, like that's a hell of an accomplishment. Like I feel like this place is like what's that one concept from Dragon Ball Z where he goes to that small planet that everything weighs like 2 million times heavier than what it actually is, and he goes there to like train or whatever to get stronger. Like that's what I feel like on some levels like this world is like coming to a place as fucked up as this is and still have like the fortitude to find God and find your soul. Like that's a hell of an accomplishment, I think. But yeah. And then funnily enough, I don't think I could find it exactly what I was looking for. There's a Gucci Mane song. Basically, it's like he said, I can fuck it up and get it right back. Get it back, bitch. I know I get it back. Give a fuck about that paper because I know I get it back. So like basically like just this concept of like, yeah, I can blow all my money because I can fucking make it all back, or I can get arrested and like have all of my money stripped down because I can build my empire back up again. So yeah, the idea of being able to lose it all and have to start back over at square one, but having the confidence and skill to know you'll make it all right back anyways. Real power doesn't lie in the serendipity of having built one empire. Real power lies in the ability to build them over and over again. Boom. Yeah. And then the final one, artistic endeavor / life's work. If you are going to be a hero, then you must give a gift. If you are the average man, you give your hero gift to the society in which you live, and you give the gift that society specifies in advance. If you are an artist, you fashion a peculiarly personal gift, the justification of your own heroic identity. As Rank argued in the breathtaking closing chapters of Art and Artist, there is no way for the artist to be at peace with his work or with the society that accepts it. The artist's gift is always to creation itself, to the ultimate meaning of life, to God. We should not be surprised that Rank was brought to exactly the same conclusion as Kierkegaard, that the only way out of human conflict is full renunciation, to give one's life as a gift to the highest powers. Absolution has to come from the absolute beyond. So going back to this idea of like real power lies in the ability to build empires over and over again, as opposed to just having the serendipity of building one. I also bring this in line with like the artistic endeavor or your life's work, as in like it's not really like you're not doing this life work to offer as a gift to God. It's more of like you're doing it to individuate your soul, your spirits, like to find yourself. Like it's not the gift itself that gets you into heaven. It's the fact that you went out of your way in this realm, avoided traps and temptations, and literally just did what you were born to do, I guess. So like it's not the gift itself, it's just the, like he says, like, I don't give a fuck about the paper because I know I get it back. It's like, I don't give a fuck about like the artistic work itself. Like, it's not like the poem that I write that gives me anything. It's who I am. It's the person I find myself to be while I write that poem. That's the thing that matters. So yeah. These are just some things that I've written myself. I am in a dialogue with reality. We've become artists of our own reality. Our subjective experience, our canvas, our emotions are gentle or vivid brushstrokes. And then this is, because I grew up, like, I hate stereotypes, and I grew up as, like, a nerd in all the, like, higher level classes and stuff like that, and, like, the typical, dynamic of, like, oh, like, jocks versus nerds, like, athletes are dumb idiots, and I'm smarter than you, and blah, 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 because my ego was bruised. Anyways, so, like, I took that and kind of flipped it on its head, in a sense. But, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, wait, hold up. Like, sport, there is some merit. There is some virtue in sport. So, yeah, people who dedicate their life to sport understand life in at least some substantial level. Regiment in sport is a reverie of the vitality of life. Sacrificing the body in servitude towards a higher ideal than man's, artistically living in prayer, actualizing the vast potential of life through grandiose displays of human strength and skill. All this is simultaneously reverence and awe and exultance of the selves expressions of humanity. So, like, yeah. Are we done? The Knight of Faith. This figure is a man who lives in faith, who has given over the meaning of life to his creator, and who lives centered on the energies of his maker. He accepts whatever happens in this visible dimension without complaint, lives his life as a duty, faces his death without a qualm. He is fully in the world on its terms and wholly beyond the world in his trust in the invisible dimension. In other words, being in the world and not of the world. The great strength of such an ideal is that it allows one to be open, generous, courageous, to touch others' lives and enrich them and open them in turn. As the Knight of Faith has no fear of life and death trip to lay onto others, he does not cause them to shrink back upon themselves. He does not coerce or manipulate them. Yeah. Like, yeah, this is an ideal. But yeah. Oh, this is from Thoreau. Cool. Let your life be a counter-friction to stop the machine. What I have to do is to see, at any rate, that I do not lend myself the wrong to which I condemn. As for adopting the ways which the state has provided for remedying the evil, I know not of such ways. They take too much time, and man's life will be gone. I forget. I'm actually... so this is in between. This is during civil disobedience. This is the letter that inspired Gandhi, Martin Luther King, a couple other people. Just this thought process has like been inherent, like pacifism, I guess, throughout most of history. But like when I first read this, like, and again, Thoreau was like one of the first. He was the first philosopher I read. But when I first read this line, I was like, I didn't get it at first. But yeah, he says, I came into this world not chiefly to make this a good place to live in, but to live in it, be it good or bad. A man has not everything to do, but something, and because he cannot do everything, it is not necessary that he should do something wrong. Yeah. So he says, the first part, I came into this world not chiefly to make this a good place to live in, but to live in it, be it good or bad. We kind of talked about that in our conflict video and being in the world and of the world. Like, you're not here to change the world. You're not here to make the world a better place. The world is here to be insignificant. The world is here to be meaningless so that you turn away from the world and go to God. Like, yeah. So, yeah. I came in this world not to make this a good place to live in, but to live in it, be it good or bad. A man has not everything to do, but something. And because he cannot do everything, it is not necessary that he should do something wrong. Like, I have a limited time in this earth. I have a very finite amount of time. So, like, why would I waste my time doing something wrong or doing something stupid or doing something evil? Like, it's not necessary. Like, I don't have the time for it. Like, not anymore anyways. Like, I'm just so fucking tired. I'm just ready to move on. Yeah, it is what it is. Ooh, and this was a reply. I don't think I ever sent it to this guy because I was like, this is probably going too far. Like, I don't want to interfere or anything. But yeah, he says, if we're all just cells of a larger being, why should you fight so vehemently to defend individual cells rather than caring for the good of the body at large? And I counter with a quote. We are not human beings trying to have a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. I don't consider myself fundamentally human. I don't attach myself to that identity label. Like the Bible says, be in the world, not of the world. Love not the things of the world, etc. Caring for the good of the body at large. Who says this body, this existence, is worth caring for? I'll ask a pointed question that people seem to gloss right over. Heaven, in most religions, is almost always described as a place other than here. If what we have here, then, is not heaven, what does that make this place? Pondering that question for a bit, you have to reconsider the notion of whether or not this place is worth caring for. In the end, the only true conspiracy is the conspiracy against the spirits. Mostly everything in this world is meant to distract you from cultivating your higher self. Even when you start seeing things for how they are, your human egoic reaction is to try to wake up others, which only disrupts your relationship with them and does nothing for actually helping your spirit to develop. As Buddhism says, let go of attachments. As Stoicism says, you are only responsible for what you can control. Your spirit is under your charge alone, and it's your responsibility to ensure its proliferation and return to God/Source, no one else's. Are you going to neglect it and let it wither in exchange for the petty distractions and neurotic despair at the state of the world? Or are you gonna, for a lack of a better term, get your shit together and focus on the only thing that's important in this life? Ta-da! And that is Cope, The Denial of Death, Why Everything is a Cult. I do apologize. This has been way too long. Utterly too long. This has been a drag. This pretty much killed my channel. Yeah. I still have, like, those other videos. I don't think anybody watches my poetry, so I'm not, like, too worried about. Like, honestly, I've come to the point where, like, I'm just glad this video is done, because, like, I feel like this can be the end of my channel. Everything I do after this is just, like, extra credit. But yeah, I'm glad. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we actually finished this. This was a lot. I'm going to end it now because I've been recording on my phone. I don't know if I have enough memory, and I want to make sure this actually saves this time. Oh yeah, I didn't mention this before. I actually mentioned it when I tried to record it another time. The first time I tried to record this, I fucking got it. I recorded it in like 2.5 hours. Looked at my phone, it didn't save. So yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're good this time. I might be coming out with some more videos soon. We'll see. I kind of want to do a read-through of The Unbearable Lightness of Being, just because I've been dealing with the vagaries of fucking romance lately, and I just need to reorient myself back on the path. But yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully I'll see y'all soon. This has been fun. I don't know if anybody still watches my shit. There's only like 2 or 3 people I can think of. But yeah, y'all take it easy. Oh my gosh. Yeah, thank you for sticking through all of this. If you stuck through all of this, like, Jesus Christ, thank you so much. But yeah, y'all take it easy.